So that Temple of the Dog song, right? And I don't know the title of that song, but the one, right? I'm going hungry.
Yeah,
right?
Hunger Strike.
Yeah. Hunger
So
Strike.
thank you. When that song was out, when Michael, you and I were in high school, I had a friend who went to do an exchange for a year in Hungary. And that was not part of the culture of my high school. Like generally, people were not curious about anything or went anywhere. So I don't know how he landed on Hungary of all places. But I was close friends with his girlfriend at the time. And so she and I spent the entire year singing, I'm going to Hungary.
Oh, God.
That's pretty good.
Boo.
You would kill me if I did that, Michael. You would kill me. You would just kick me out of the pod. You would just, so bad.
I would.
Respect that. That's good shit.
Well, hey everyone, I'm Michael Osinski.
And I'm Tyler Esselman.
And you're listening to This One Goes to 11.
This One Goes to 11. It's our podcast. And we have, each week, we invite somebody on to make their case for what they believe is a perfect album.
So perfect that 10 out of 10 just is not good enough.
And you got a little taste of who we're talking to today. But maybe we should just get right. Maybe we should just introduce this person now. Michael, who's staying hungry?
We are talking to Tim Fawkes, multi-instrumentalist and conductor. Tim Fawkes has spent 20 years teaching music in the public schools of Illinois and Pennsylvania, and he is currently the conductor of the orchestra of the University of Illinois at Chicago, where he's developing a new model for healthy communal music making. Tim performs on trumpet, cello, and guitar in venues around Chicago, most notably in the band Midnight Hour, which pays tribute to classic soul music from Otis Redding to Amy Winehouse. He lives in Chicago with his husband Kevin, a visual artist and teacher, and his orange cat Henderson, whose favorite music is the Bach cello suites. Tim, so good to see you.
Woohoo! Thanks, guys. I'm so excited to be here.
He's here.
Just to confirm, the cat's favorite music is the Bach cello suites.
Yes.
Okay.
So
it's your husband's.
So that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
So Kevin, I think, is fine with the Bach cello suites.
Yeah.
Never heard any.
Lukewarm.
But Henderson will hang out on the radiator cover just outside of the room where I play the cello.
Wow.
And he really enjoys that a lot. It seems to be the music he pays closest attention to. Seems not really interested in either Sarah McLachlan or Temple of the Dog, for what it's worth.
Oh, okay. Well, there's no accounting for taste, even with a cat.
Yeah.
I mean, but Bach, that's he's got refined taste. Does he prefer Fancy Feast?
Oh, he does. He does.
Okay.
It's got champagne tastes cat.
I had my cat, Molly, who passed away a few years ago, she lived with me when Trump got elected the first time. Mm. And weirdly enough, a couple of weeks after the election, she quit eating Fancy Feast, which I think we know is a little bit more upmarket, right?
Yeah.
And then she was only content with Friskies, which, is still wet food, but is a slightly more,
blue collar
working class. It's a blue collar cat food. And I really thought to myself, oh wow, is she doing, like, did she read Hillbilly Elegy? Is she trying to empathize with?
Is she cosplaying as working class? Yeah.
Has she been reading all those like New York Times pieces about diners in Ohio? Is that what's going on? Yeah. And then a few weeks after the election, she just decided she was a bougie bitch and went back. Who we are.
She's tuned into something. I got to tell you.
Oh my God,
that's crazy. She was tuned. Yeah, may she rest in peace. Sorry. Yeah, but I miss cats. I need a cat. That's on my list.
Tell me about it. Oh man.
All right. How did you all meet? What's the story there? Give the listeners and me the little update on what's the Tim and Michael story.
Well, do we go the sad route?
As much as you want.
I think we kind of have to go the sad route a little bit because the person who connected us is no longer with us.
Oh.
So it was a friend setup, which Tyler, you've lived in a few places and you've probably gotten set up to be friends. Have you? I don't know if you found, like, sometimes it actually clicks, and most of the time it is a total bust.
Yeah.
Even when it's it should work out when it's somebody you really like who's trying to connect the people, and it just kind of works out to be a bust.
Yeah.
But I've had just a couple of really good friend setups in my life, and Michael was one of them. And so I was moving from Austin, Texas to Philadelphia in 2007, and Michael had lived in Chicago in the early aughts and was friends with a friend of mine named Chris Vire. Chris was a wonderful arts journalist, theater writer.
Oh yeah, legendary.
Passed away of cancer, shockingly, just a few months ago.
Yeah.
But Chris knew I was moving to Philly and said, "Hey, you should meet my friend Michael Lewzinski," and did the same with you. And we became good friends, and have been in and out of touch over many years. I think that
That's
thing
the
of
best.
friendship, right, where you like, oh, this is a great friend of mine. I speak to them once every 3 years.
Yeah, I got them. I got those too. If I didn't have a podcast with Michael, it's really just an excuse for us to hang out a couple times a week.
I mean, honestly, yeah.
Yeah. It's great structured hang time. So man, sometimes those friend setups don't stick like this. This is a special one then.
We had 2 memorable concerts too that we saw. At least memorable. I remember them. I mean, one we saw Grizzly Bear together.
Oh,
yes,
nice.
At the Truck, right? Weren't they at the Truck?
It was a great Grizzly Bear show.
They
Yes.
do a great show. They do a really good show. What was the other one?
We saw the Futureheads in the
Really?
basement of the Unitarian Universalist Church. Do you remember that one, Tim?
Yes. Oh, yes, I do. Does that venue still exist?
I think so.
I saw so many really cool things in that basement. It was just an amazing, like, sweaty venue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We love that.
I think I saw Menomina there. Do you remember them?
Oh my God! Wow.
Yeah.
Now I remember. I mean, I remember when I heard their name, I just immediately thought of the Muppets, of course.
Well,
And I'm sure that was the intention, but
that's the reference. Has to be, right?
yeah.
Well, I think this is a strong match as Monsieur Gustave in Wes Anderson's The Grand Budapest Hotel would say. I approve of this union, and I'm really glad that you made it on, Tim, because Michael's been wanting to have you, and I'm excited about this artist that you're talking about today. I was hoping that she would be one of the people that you saw together, because wouldn't that just beat all? But it unfortunately doesn't sound like it was the case. But Tim, let's get down to business here.
Okay.
Can you tell our listeners what album hath thou brought before the This One Goes to 11 tribunal today?
I'm gonna give this the slow wind up, and feel
Great.
free to cut this out later if it's
From the
just that
stretch.
interesting. So some of your listeners might recall a Saturday Night Live sketch from several years ago. I believe it was written by Julio Torres, called "Wells for Boys."
Genius. Yes.
So the concept of the wells for sensitive boys, right? So this was the idea, and this really hit me. And Michael, I don't know if you felt this way at all, but the idea being, for like a queer or sensitive kid, a little kid, right? An elementary school age kid growing up in a world that just does not speak to them at all, right?
Yeah.
That the well for sensitive boys was a salve, right? Was something that a sensitive boy could use for consolation.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm in my mid 40s. So I was junior high school age and high school age and college age in the 90s. And so some of the music of the 90s provided this Wells for Boys feeling. And at the top of that list is Fumbling Towards Ecstasy by Sarah McLachlan.
Oh, that was a great wind up. And then you just right down the middle, baby. You painted the corners. You painted the corners with that one. I'm not familiar with this sketch, but it sounds like Julio Torres through and through. Julio's really sharp. I don't know if you've watched any of Julio's other stuff, but
what an original thinker, right?
Yeah.
My Favorite Shapes and Problemista.
Yeah, Michael, have you gotten on the Julio train yet?
Not technically, no, but I mean, I'm very familiar with this sketch. Like,
Yeah.
it was sort of iconic, and yeah, I don't know if it spoke to me the same way it spoke to you, but I do feel like there's every once in a while that they do something that feels like it is targeting a niche market.
Yeah.
I think more so lately, now that they've got some more gay writers on SNL. I mean, there are some sketches where it's like, oh my God, like Bowen Yang just took over this whole thing and like littered it with like gay jargon and slang. And
yeah, definitely.
I don't know.
Big pro Sarah McLachlan podcast, if I might speak for Michael, or at least I'm speaking for myself. So I'll try to be very professional about this and how, as you build your case. But for our listeners out there who may not be familiar with Miss McLachlan's work, we do have a convenient feature for them to kind of get up to date on the artist and this album. Michael, what's the thing called again? What are we saying?
It's called The Beginner's Guide to Sarah McLachlan's Fumbling Towards Ecstasy in 60 seconds. 60
seconds, and I only have 60 seconds to do it today, don't I?
Yeah, you do. You're doing it. And so Tim, you get to evaluate. You get to whatever. I mean, you're. I don't know if you're a fan of a rubric, but are you a fan of a rubric?
Well, I'm a school teacher, so I live in them. So when I'm not working, I'm desperate to avoid them. So I will do this as tyrannically and unpredictably as possible.
Great.
Okay, that feels on brand, not for you, but for the moment. That's all we're going to say about that. Tyler, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, my 60 seconds is on the clock, starting in 3, 2, 1. Go.
We've covered several Lilith Fair associated acts on this pod, but it's past time we gave Mother herself her due. That's right, it's Sarah McLachlan time. McLachlan was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia as the sun set on the 60s. Her musical acumen was clear from the moment she picked up a ukulele at age 4, and her enthusiastic study and persistent gigging around Halifax snowballed into a signing with Canadian label Network at the tender age of 19. Her first 2 records with Network introduced McLachlan's trademark ethereal yet powerful voice and heart-wrenchingly passionate songwriting to a primarily Canadian audience. But it wasn't until her third full-length, Fumbling Toward Ecstasy, that Mackers burst onto the international stage. Elisa Gardner of Rolling Stone wrote that there are moments of quiet radiance on Ecstasy, and even the more elusive songs reveal a passionate dignity. This would lead to one of the most fruitful periods of McLachlan's career, her 4th and so far best-selling album Surfacing, and the establishment of the aforementioned Lilith Fair in an effort to promote and celebrate female musicians. She's won countless awards, promoted urgent social causes, and cut an idiosyncratic, indelible figure in North American music sans doute. So how about we, in the arms of the angels, fly away with Sarah?
All right. All right, Tim.
Not quite as on time as my last one, but still, I'm getting better at this.
All right, Tim. Bring down your tyrannical hammer. What do you have to say?
To be in the room with Sarah McLachlan and somebody who addresses her as Mackers is the dream I didn't know I had until now. 12 out of 10.
12 out of 10. Let's go. Yes.
Oh, wow.
This is great. I would do it too. I would definitely do it. Like, I think
call
that's my
Mackers?
Yeah, I would call her Mackers because like it's best. I think it's best when encountering a celebrity probably to pretend like you don't know who they are, right? As like a power move. I accidentally did that when I worked at Equinox selling gym memberships. There was one big influencer who I had no idea who she was, and I signed her up. I actually sold her a membership. Come to find out, she had more money than God, but I had no idea who she was, and she probably thought I was pretending not to know. But with Sarah, I would probably pretend not to know and be like, "Oh, Miss McLachlan, how you doing, Mackers? Welcome to Arby's or wherever I'm working in this scenario."
Oh my God, something tells me she's not going to Arby's.
You don't know. They have the meats.
What if that's her like secret shame food?
I hope it is.
Private, right? I mean, a lot of us have private food secrets, right?
Hey, that Arby's sauce, I don't know what's in it, but it's good.
It's good. Yeah, I love a sauce. You know I love a sauce. Anyway, okay. Tim, thank you for the 12 out of 10. I appreciate it. I felt good about this one. But before, you've already kind of given us a glimpse into your Wells for Sad Boys upbringing and sort of genesis, but we'd love to get a little bit deeper of a dive on you before we talk about Mackers. Sure. Tell us a little bit more about what your relationship with music is in general, writ large, if you will.
So you guys know, because you're artists, when you do an art as your job, you have a strange relationship to the art.
Preach.
And so music is my hobby and a thing I love and also my job. And so it's always, I'm always kind of having a few different relationships to it, right? With some mixtures of delight and hate and misery and wonder and curiosity. I grew up in the suburban Midwest. And
what suburb? What suburb was it?
I grew up in Orland Hills, Illinois,
Hills, okay.
1 hour south of Chicago.
Nice.
And it is the less nice version of Orland Park, where there's an actually pretty nice mall.
Okay. Gotcha.
But the mall is really kind of like the center of the culture, right? So, as an 80s, 90s kid, certainly like being a teenager in the 90s, I was listening to the stuff we were all listening to. I loved Nirvana, and I loved Soundgarden, and I loved Blind Melon, and I loved the Breeders, and also I had a really soft spot for all these women singers. This thing of gay men and their women, right? So I think a lot of young gay men, gravitate to like, was it at the time? Was it Whitney Houston? Was it Mariah Carey? And certainly I loved them, but then I also really had a soft spot for these singer-songwriter types. I remember being I Carole King.
Yeah.
Loved your Tapestry episode, by the way. I remember, being into certainly Tori Amos in the 90s. I think it's interesting to think about the differences between an artist like Tori Amos and somebody like Sarah McLachlan. But Sarah McLachlan really hit that sweet spot for me in terms of, this is really gorgeous music. This is really comforting. This, provides me like a quiet space where I can be and I can feel safe. But, in terms of the music that I spend my time with, in my work, teaching and conducting, I teach people to play mostly classical music, but not exclusively. I teach a Latin music group, so I'm like learning all these different styles of Latin American music on the fly, and my Latinx students are kind of teaching me about cumbias and bachatas and rancheras, so I can teach them how to play them. And I grew up playing jazz trumpet, and these days, still listen to a lot of jazz. I've been wild about Alice Coltrane over the last couple of years.
Dude, me too. That is really she's amazing. Yeah, what the hell?
And I didn't know she existed. I had listened to I had taken tests in college on John Coltrane and never listened to Alice's music. And then, all that stuff where she's playing the harp is like, what even is this?
Outrageous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff. And, through that kind of brought me into all kinds of like soul and R&B music, singers like all these neo soul folks of the 21st century, like Erykah Badu is a forever favorite of mine. Tyrone is my karaoke go-to. So, I try to cast a wide net.
Yeah.
I have a very specific memory of you, Tim.
Oh,
I don't know if you remember it.
That may have been the same evening where I tried to get everybody to sing the theme song to the Philly Action News, perhaps?
I mean, that tracks. I know you were throwing a party.
I don't remember much about the party afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you definitely did. You sang it. I don't know what key you were in, but it was but it's still. I just remember it's so vivid because I think I was pretty sober at the time, but I have a question for you, Tim. Though, is there any kind of music that you won't listen to, or that you just sort of like it just like I don't know rubs you the wrong way, or are you pretty open to just about anything?
Wow. I will say that I think pretty much any music, when you learn, what makes it tick, pretty much anything I can find something in to grab onto and appreciate a little bit. Yeah. Except for Leonard Skinner, who were terrible. And
that's a great specific answer.
And the Mannheim Steamroller Christmas stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mannheim Steamroller. My grandmother loves Mannheim Steamroller. Like, if we ever have her on this podcast, she's probably going to want to talk about Mannheim Steamroller.
So. People do really love it. And every holiday season, every like NBA game returning from commercial, right? You're getting that Mannheim Steamroller, right?
Yeah.
People really love it.
They do. Trans-Siberian Orchestra has a profitable tour every single year. What the fuck is that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
Anyway.
What about country? Do you like country?
Oh, well, I feel like this is a big question,
What is country?
So,
what is country, baby?
Am I into Morgan Wallen? No, I'm really not,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Am I into oh gosh, I don't even know who these people are. Like Luke Combs.
Yeah, Luke Combs.
Do I like Patsy Cline? Yes, I do like Patsy Cline.
Yeah. Dolly Parton. Are you like, would you go for,
twice a day and 3 times on Sunday.
There you go.
Yeah. Dolly is just a national treasure.
Well, you're continuing a trend, and it's something we've discussed when we discuss country music of like, well, first of all, what is it? And then second of all, everybody says, well, I love old country. I love Willie Nelson. I love Hank Williams. And for a long time, that was my answer too. But it's like, I think country, and it's not just Beyonce starting this discussion. It's like, what is it turning into? And the same goes for like Latin inflected music. I'm sure you're learning about all sorts of like Latin pop artists from your students that are like, I know nothing about, but they're huge. They're gigantic all across the world. There's these hidden scenes. I'm always interested in what people tap into,
And there's more to know than you can possibly. Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like I know more music than most people, and yet there's so much that I really don't know anything about.
Yeah.
In my house, we were talking about Marianne Faithfull after she just died, and my husband is quite a fan of hers, and he'll listen to her music, and every time we listen to it, I'll think, oh, this is just great. I'm really into this, but I never really like took a moment to grab onto her.
Yeah.
And so he's been teaching me about her life story, which is just like bananas and harrowing and intense, and her music, which is incredible. And so there's just always more to find.
There is.
So do you remember how and when you discovered Sarah McLachlan and this particular album?
Oh yeah. So I was probably listening to terrestrial radio in Chicago. Nice. I was probably listening to 101.9 FM, which was like the hot adult contemporary. I think they called it hot AC, right?
Oh, nice.
As a radio format. So obviously, radio stations at the time in Chicago, we listened to Q101 a bunch, which was the alternative and grunge station, and was great. People still love WXRT, which is kind of the rock radio station in Chicago, though it's famously not what it was. And then, you'd catch some good things on a few other stations. 101.9 also had this kind of famous morning talk show, the Eric and Kathy show, which was on for like 30 years until Eric turned out to be, I think he turned out to be like some kind of sexual harasser.
Great.
Like
you do.
So I was probably listening to the Eric and Kathy morning show, and they played Possession, which of course is the first track off of this album.
And a banger.
And a wild story. So she was stalked by 2 different people. And so she used both of those stories to write that song. That it's such a compelling track right away. The Hammond B3 organ in that song is so great. And then the drum machines are so interesting on this whole album. And so I remember thinking, I remember thinking, this seems kind of gay. When I go to Circuit City and buy this on CD and not have people think I'm gay.
Circuit City.
So like I sort of like, made sure nobody was around at the Circuit City, or I bought my copy of Fumbling Towards Ecstasy, and pretty quickly figured out, this is the perfect album to like listen to alone on my Discman late at night, right? It rewards, a lot of albums reward social listening, right? Or want a party, right? This is not a party album. This is a being alone in your feelings album. And being, 14, 15 years old at the time, I had a lot of feelings.
I was you talk about like playing it alone on a Discman. I was thinking about how like this album and her music is not the sort of music that you would play like at full volume. Like I feel like there's like this stigma against music like this being played that loud, because it's only that sort of music is supposed to be like, I don't know, hard rock or industrial or something like that. But like this album is very rewarding to play very loudly when you're having your feelings. I will say, like it does. I don't know. There's something kind of enveloping about this, and also you mentioned the drum machines. Yeah, there's something really fascinating about the instrumentation on this album too. Like there's something mysterious about it, and kind of unlike what was being recorded in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. If I remember my 90s pretty well.
I think you're onto something, because to me, it at times, and maybe this is only me who thinks this, but it gets a little Cocteau Twins-y.
Ooh, yeah.
A little dream pop.
It sort of like grabs some of those sounds and pulls them, into the mid-90s.
Good shout. I like that.
Oh, amazing, right? So yeah, I think you're right that some of those sounds are like extremely contemporary that you hear on this album, and some of them seem a little bit out of time. And sonically, you're right. It does make for a really rewarding, like to get like crank up that volume and get lost in that sound. I think it's interesting, and you probably have to, if you're going to talk about this album, you have to kind of deal with the fact that like after this album, she really didn't explore most of these sounds again meaningfully. Yeah. I hate to say it, but I kind of think she hasn't been, this interesting since then.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, you expressed an opinion about the relationship of this album to its follow-up to me the other night. What's your take here?
This is the better album. Like, I know everybody bought Surfacing and everyone was building a mystery and singing about Adia and doing what they have to do and In the Arms of an Angel and whatever the other song is from the album. And everyone loved that. But I remember thinking that it almost felt to me like when Surfacing came out that she was selling out in some way, even though I don't think she was, because there's still some gorgeous songs on that album. It just feels like Fumbling Towards Ecstasy is, to me, I mean, also too, and I won't go into super detail account with this, but I also associate this album with my first ever boyfriend.
Fumbling, you do, or Surfacing?
Fumbling, because we both listened to like Tori Amos and this particular Sarah McLachlan album. I was also really into Led Zeppelin then too, which kind of goes with Tori Amos, but I don't know. I can't explain myself. But in any case, I truly believe this is the superior album. I think it is better than Surfacing, and I will hold to that. You will hold me to that one. So
it sounds like you're in agreement on that. Tim, are you saying this is? Are we going so far as to say this is the peak of her songwriting powers?
Yeah, this is her creative peak, I think.
Okay.
And I have a theory about this. And I don't know what you guys think about this. Artists who are really processing their angst, right, are emotionally processing, which is not every artist.
No.
Sometimes they get through processing, and then there's just a little less left in the tank. And I'm not here to criticize her later career. I actually saw her. I saw Sarah McLachlan last summer on the 30th anniversary tour of Fumbling Towards Ecstasy.
Look at you.
It was an amazing outdoor concert. I paid $28 for a pomegranate margarita.
God bless America. Am I wrong?
But she sounds amazing. Yeah. She looks amazing. She seems like the loveliest lady. She's using concert proceeds to fund her music school for little kids. I got nothing bad to say about her. But I think she is one of these artists who maybe processed the darkest stuff, and then maybe there just wasn't quite as deep a well to go back to. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think Alanis Morissette is just going to say that. Like this too, Yeah. And so if you're checking out like 2004 Alanis Morissette, I mean, there's just not that much there. Right? Yeah. Because she's content.
Yeah. Though maybe this is, because my dad is a huge fan of Alanis's most recent album, and he loves the songs on this. My daddy, he's obsessed. He loves this freaking album, and he
has he been a ride or die through the entire?
No, not at all.
Okay.
This is like he's never really cared about Alanis in my mind until this most recent record came out, and they saw her in St. Louis a while back, and it was just like in his estimation, and honestly, I've listened to this record, it's pretty good, but like in his estimation, she's kind of reaching in a new chapter of her songwriting. Like this new phase of her life is something different. The song he always shares with me and my sister is this song that she wrote for her children, and so it's like there's something about having a target, like there's something about having something you're working towards. And like, I really appreciate what you're saying about she's clearly working out angst on Fumbling to really great effect. And maybe she's been missing that target. Maybe she's been missing that focus, that creative focus, something that can make it go that extra little bit, all the way to 11, if you will. You're following records. I don't know. I just like this idea going on.
I think you're really onto something. I'm going to have to check out this new Alanis stuff because I haven't really listened to new Alanis Morissette in a long time, and so
can recommend. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's inspiring that people can change and can kind of find a new influence and can meet the moment in a new way as they evolve. We should
please God let it be true.
That does also remind me, we still have not talked about Jagged Little Pill. It feels like one of those albums we should talk about at some point.
Well, maybe my dad will get obsessed with Jagged Little Pill, and maybe he'll want to come on and talk about Jagged Little Pill. Dad, if you're listening, do your homework. Okay, so we've already talked a little bit about sort of the overarching powers of this record, and also a few of the tracks, particularly Possession. But let's drill down a little bit further. And Tim, why don't you take this moment to call out what you believe is the standout track from this album?
So I went with Hold On, and there are a few things I love about Hold On.
And hold on to those things that you want to talk about. Hold on about. Just hold on, because we're gonna let the listeners have a little sneak peek. So everybody, here is Hold On by Sarah McLachlan.